Well, so welcome. Today's the guest is Melanie Stroud. And I said that right? Goodness, I was
Yes,
so nervous.
that is me.
Good. She's the host of the Come Follow Me for Us podcast. And that's how I first became familiar with Melanie, is because I've been a listener of that podcast for the past, since it really started, I suppose, so 2.5 years now. And if you haven't listened to it, you should. It's excellent and great. It's a faith-based podcast. Melanie, I'll give you a chance to explain and expound more about it. But in a nutshell, she follows the Come Follow Me curriculum, which is put on by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and just excellent discussions about faith in Jesus Christ. A lot of those topics about how it applies to your everyday life. She dives deep into scriptures, both the Bible and scriptures that are unique to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants. That being said, why I wanted Melanie, why I invited you here, is because your story has been fascinating to me. And then from someone without a media background, having never started a business before, you've been able to grow your podcast in a way that has impacted millions of people, right? At least millions of downloads, I presume.
Right.
Millions of people.
Right.
So that being said, welcome to
Thank
the
you.
Extraordinary Business Life podcast. I'm so happy that you're here.
I am too. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. I really would love to. The first question is really open-ended. I'd love, while I am familiar somewhat with your background and from our conversations and listening to your podcast, our listeners and watchers aren't. And so why don't you share your background? Why did you start the podcast? What was your motivation back then? And kind of share some of the story between then and now.
Okay. Well, I have a degree in special education from Brigham Young University, but I only taught a year. And then I started having kids and having kids and having kids. And I ended up having 5 children. My first husband was a dentist. And so I had the luxury of staying home and, raising these children. And that was kind of all I had known for the past 23 years. And then I found myself getting divorced. And all of a sudden, my job that had been raising these children, not only every other week, I didn't even have my children. And so my whole life was kind of turned upside down, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to go back to teaching. I'd have to spend years getting my license back, up. And I didn't really want to do that because I just didn't want to do that. And so I was trying to decide what to do. And I was praying about it. Like you said, it's a faith-based podcast. I'm a faith-based person. And I was praying, trying to decide, what to do. And I had a couple really good ideas. And I felt like I got an answer to my prayers through my brother-in-law. And we were talking, and I just had this feeling like, you have a talent, you know what it is. It's time to share it with the world. And I was thinking, like, what is that? But I knew that people like to hear me speak in the church. My computer's running out of, people like to hear me speak. People would like when I taught lessons at church. And so I thought, well, maybe I could do something with that. And my friend said, well, why don't you start a podcast? And I was like, I don't know how to do that. And so she looked up microphones, and the next day she dragged me to Best Buy. We got a microphone. I looked up online how to record it, and I found this free app. And so I sat down in my closet one day, because that's where I heard the best acoustics are for a podcast. And I got out the microphone, and I sat in front of it and was like, I love Jesus. It was so weird. It was so weird talking to nobody, to have it was just nothing to talk about. So I put that away, and I said, I'm not going to do that. I had another idea about starting a car blog for women, which was a great idea. And I still hope at some point I can go back to it, because people were getting really excited about it. I was going to the dealerships. They were handing me cars to reviews. Stroller companies were sending me products to use in the videos. I think I could have made a lot of money, and that could have been very successful. But this podcasting kept pushing me. And I really feel like it was God pushing me, to do it. And so I had kind of thrown the idea out. And then right before Christmas, my friend said, well, why don't you start one on Come Follow Me? Because our church was going to start this new curriculum starting in January, where they were going to have a lesson every week that we were kind of supposed to do as families at home. And we had never done anything like this before. And so when she said that, I thought, well, that would give me something to talk about. Right. Because I just didn't, although I love Jesus, I didn't know how I could make that like a weekly thing. And so I did a little recording about my thoughts on the first episode. And I kid you not, on December 31st, or December 30th, it was going to come out December 31st of 2018. I was Googling at 1 a.m. how to publish a podcast. Like, I'm such a procrastinator. Like, it's recorded, but now I don't know what to do. And I figured it out. I push publish, and I put on my personal Facebook page, I started a podcast about Come Follow Me if anyone wants to listen. And that was that. And I really thought it would be for maybe the members of the church in my area, my family, extended family. That's kind of as far as I thought it was going to go, really. And it spread really quickly by word of mouth. I never did any advertising. I never did anything. And then now, like 2 years later, we're at 2 million downloads, and it's just been this crazy thing. I don't even know how to do social media on, like Instagram and those things. I was just, I don't know what I'm doing. And so I'm learning by trial and error. And here we are. So it was just a crazy fluke thing. And I joked with you, like, you want me to show how to start a business that takes all your time and doesn't make any money? Well, I'm your girl, right? But fortunately, I still have, even though I got remarried and lost all my alimony, I do have some money coming in from my past life that is enabling me to continue to work on this podcast without trying to make it be a moneymaker right now. I have enough listeners that I could put ads on it, but I really don't want to because it's faith-based. It feels a little tacky, like, hey, and God really helped me get this alarm system on your house. I don't know. It just feels weird. So maybe at some point, I'll go for some avenue, but for right now, this is where we are.
Yeah. I love, I love that when you kind of shot back from my invitation to be on the podcast, that whole idea of, yeah, I'd be great. I, spend all my time and not make any money. I thought that was so funny.
Not the best business model, but I do think people can tell it's authentic, like I'm not doing it for any reason other than just to share my love of the scriptures with people and the love of the Lord, and that people write to me and say, I was in a really bad place and your podcast changed my life. Mm-hmm. And it was also cool too. I know this isn't a faith-based podcast that you do, but it was cool to me because I felt like my divorce was finalized the second week of the podcast. And all of a sudden I'm having strangers write to me and saying, we love you. You're changing my life. We can't wait to hear you. Our kids love you, all of these things. And it was in a time where I felt like pretty unloved, and a pretty low spot. And so I think not only was it helping other people, but I think God was like, this girl's going to be pretty sad. And I want to like boost her up too. So if she does this thing for me, there's this blessing that's going to be given to her in return. And that was kind of a cool byproduct of it too. So yeah, I just felt fortunate the way the whole thing went down.
Wonderful. That's awesome. Well, one of the reasons I think, like your story, even though your business currently isn't, this big money maker, why it's really, I feel it's a really important message to have here is that, like in today's society, we expect like fast results, right? But like, we forget about the journey, right? It's and that kind of goes with the faith, whether you're not you adhere to a faith, right? It's like there's this idea of a broader perspective of your journey, and in order to like, we kind of see these people who have made it, or they have like, let's say, a really successful business, or they have things figured out in their life, and so we see them and we're like, man, I wish I was there. But you forget that they had to go through, years and years of like not making money, going
Right.
bankrupt, like figuring out,
Right.
like they had their messes, right?
Yes, we all do, and I
Yeah.
think that's something else that I learned is that you have to follow a passion, because I could have made the car blog thing successful because I love cars. Like, I'll talk horsepower and stuff with the best of the boys. Like, I really like driving cars. I like seeing all the features. So I think I could have been good at that, and that could have been very lucrative as well. But I think that this one took off so fast, and if I was more organized with my time, I think I could do both. And at some point, maybe if I have an assistant or some helper, maybe I can do both. But I think the thing that I learned is people can spot a fake. So if you want to start a cooking blog because you love watching cooking blogs, but you don't like to cook, it's not going to be successful. And if you want to, you know, you have to follow your passion. And my passion was the scriptures, and it always has been. So it made sense for me to go this route. And now I'm writing a book, and there's people, it's like, are you done? Are you done? Like waiting for it. And so I think that sometimes you do have to put in the blood, sweat, and tears if you want to make money, because even podcasts, they don't make money unless you put ads on them. I mean, they just don't. And
Yeah.
so, a lot of times you do, just like you were saying, you spend a lot of time working until you reap the benefits. And so a lot of people don't have the fortunate as me that I have some income coming in. I've been remarried. My husband has good income, so we're able to make this work without making money. But a lot of people start businesses on the side, and they make the podcast, and then they're working 9 to 5. So, you really do have to put in, but you have to make sure it's something you're passionate about it, because people can spot a fake. And that's why people say they like it, is because you're real, maybe
Yeah.
too real. Maybe that's why they like it. It's like Days of Our Lives, like I'm putting out all my garbage.
Well, like I do, and that's one of the reasons why I like your podcast so much, is because, and if you don't know, there are other, like for the listeners, there are other podcasts that follow the Come Follow Me curriculum, and they're put on by people who are like professional educators, and they've got funding, and they've got production teams, and so it's like really edited. They sometimes they like, I don't know, there's lots of,
They're amazing.
yeah, they're like,
Yes.
the production value is like way high.
Right.
But there's a certain group of people that's not the way that they're going to receive the message the best, right?
Yeah.
They need to hear it from you.
Well,
And
it's nice of you to say. I did feel intimidated when there's a new podcast that started this year that you're talking about, that has all the knowledge and the guest speakers and stuff. And when that happened, like, I was like, I'm just this dumb girl in a closet. Really, it kind of took a hit on my self-esteem. And then I was like, stop. Like you said, everybody, I served a mission for our church in Japan, and I'm pretty crazy. And the people in Japan are very like serious. We would teach English class, and at the end, they'd be like, my face hurts, like from laughing and stuff. And one time, one of the girls we were teaching said, every kind of person needs to hear about the church. That's why there's Sister Price, because, and that's how I feel about the podcast. Like, I'm kind of nuts. I quote The Simpsons, I'm not really the normal member, I guess, of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, although I am. I mean, I'm so devoted, but just a little silly. And, it's not for everybody. I think some people listen and are like, what is this? But some people listen and go, oh my gosh, this is what I need. So
yeah,
don't be intimidated by your competition either, because that's probably something I should say, because I really did take a self-esteem hit when they started a successful podcast. But why? Like, mine's successful. Who cares?
right. Yeah, and I think you do, like, what you described is something that so many people feel with whatever business. They're like, my industry is saturated, like so many other people do that. But like, I love how you articulated that there's like a group of people that need to hear it from you, because you're the only one with like your exact blend of life experience, knowledge, skills, like ability to communicate. And so like as such, there's a group of people that really like need to hear it from you. and by not doing it, by like listening to your fear, you're like, you know what, I won't because there's so many other better people out there. You really do a disservice, right?
Right.
You exclude these people that are hoping that you publish, right? That hoping that
Right.
you put content out there.
Right. And as people starting a small business, they're going to have to realize there's always somebody better than you. Like I always think that, and that sounds bad. Like I don't want to say like you're always going to be the worst. That's not it. But if you're trying to compare yourself to the big wigs who you don't know, like you said, how much blood, sweat, and tears they put in for a million years, like these people that have this podcast that got successful overnight, they've been speaking in the church and working in the church since I was a youth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that their podcast took off this fast, they've already been working for 25 years plus to get the following, so I can't compare myself to that. And if you're starting a small business, you can't say, well, I'm doing a craft show, but all these people like Martha Stewart and they don't like me. Like, dude, she's been doing it forever. And she even had to do a show with Snoop Dogg. So she's paid the blood, sweat, and tears is there, right?
She's paid her dues, Oh, that's
so
good.
Anyway, the comparison game isn't good. You just have to find your niche within what is it? The category, like what makes you different from the other people in your group? Find out. Mine was just telling all my garbage and being very real. Like, this is how fallible I am. Like, here's where I judged this person or where I wanted to, murder my children. Like, here's the real life. And I think sometimes people don't want to get into real life. We're too guarded. We want to send out this persona like we're perfect. And I think that helped me too by saying like, I'm not perfect at all. And I think people latch on to that because deep down, none of us are perfect.
No, you're exactly right. I was listening to I was listening to Dean Graziosi and Tony Robbins. They're doing like a live webcast thing for like yesterday, today, and a couple of days. And so yesterday they had this message. Dean Graziosi was talking about how your mess becomes your message. And I liked that
I too.
because it's true. Like, your unique life experience. In your case, a divorce and navigating that through, like you go to the same congregation, right, in the church, and so like there's dynamic there. You have kids, and so it's like there's a lot that there you're trying to like navigate friendships, relationships, your faith, like who you are as a mom and all this kind of stuff. And so there's a mess there, right? And through it you learn. And it's not like you've got all life figured out, but you've learned some stuff that helped you. And now there's other people who have messes like that in their life that are hoping someone can help them navigate it. And in some way you become that for them, right? So your mess is your message.
I like that a lot. I've never heard that. That's a cool thought.
Yeah. And
because you're a hot mess, you have a hot podcast. Is that your message to me? Because I'm just kidding. But no, I do. I get that. And I do think too, as a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there's a pressure a little bit to be perfect, or at least to show that we're perfect, not the gospel, but the culture, and the women. I think there's a pressure that we feel sometimes like our house has to be perfectly clean. Our kids have to be perfectly mannered and smart. And we have to bake homemade bread and all this, And so for me to get on and say like, I was so angry. I took a cantaloupe rind, threw it across the room, like when I'm like saying, here's real life, or when I talk about mental illness or postpartum depression or some of these more serious things, people write to me and say like, if someone like you, who they see as perfect, whatever, could have this problem, then it's okay that I do.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
guess a mess is your message is really good, because that's exactly what went down in my life. And I do think that being divorced in the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints is, it's not like down upon, but it's more rare. We're very family oriented church, and that's the ideal. And the fact that I could get divorced but still believe in the ideal and not get bitter and angry was something that was cool too, because that's a hard road to navigate. So I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, you say you're writing a book. Like I think about books that are like really, best-selling books or like really good story, and even movies that tell a good story. It's like there's common themes, which is that there's a main character, and they often reluctantly like take on, a task, like life kind of thrusts them into something, and it's messy, and then
Right.
the story finally reaches resolution, right? They kind of figure I'm thinking of like Star Wars, right? Luke Skywalker, he's like a nobody, and then like his whole family gets murdered, and he's like, well, now what do I do? And he
Right.
died, and he's just like going from failure to failure until he finally is like makes it as this Jedi Knight. Or
Yeah.
I don't know, the Hunger Games, right? Katniss is just like
Right. Right.
just
But
it's
they
like
do, when you say that, like Katniss, when she like sings her little song and they do their little salute, like you feel one with her. Like she's brave. I can be brave. And I feel like sometimes people feel like that about the podcast. Like she's had it rough and she still has faith. She's still going forward. So can I.
yeah.
And I think that's why we love those movies, is the movies never just end with like the main character going, well, I give up, credits roll, like that's not what we want to see. And so I think too, as I've gone along through this 2 years, like people have seen me get remarried. They've seen, some more of my kids lose their faith. So, they've kind of watched my journey, and maybe it is like a saga, just needs more Ewoks or something in it to be a major motion picture.
Yeah, I love that. No, but it's totally right, because like those same stories, right? Like Hunger Games, if the main character had everything go their way, right? They're like, well, I hope I don't get picked, and then they don't, and then they like get a nice job, and they marry the right person, and it's like all, and then you get to the end of the movie, and you're like, why did I watch? I mean, this is boring.
Yeah, exactly. Hold on. Well, and yeah.
And so like I think what we're seeing in the business world is that there's kind of a renaissance of small business and entrepreneurship, and the ones that really are successful have this element of authenticity, right?
Yes.
They find the way to lean into their imperfections, and offer their lessons learned in that mess as like this way for other people to succeed and get out of that.
Yeah. And it's hard. A lot of times people don't like to open up about where they haven't been successful. That's like, we have pride, and I don't know where my pride went when I was like, well, here's all the ways I messed up being a parent and being a wife and whatever. I don't know. But I think we learn from mistakes. And when you were talking about the movies, I love Emperor's New Groove. It's like one of my favorite cartoons. And there's one point where he's sitting there. It's like he's reached his bottom, right? And he's sitting in the rain, and he's like, me, and what he learned as he like leaves that area and goes, to be the successful ending, is he learned how to serve other people and stop thinking about himself. And I think with our small businesses, when we start focusing on what we can give, like how my product can help other people, or how what I know can help other people, instead of how much money can I make? How much money can I make? How can I make this lucrative? Then I think you'll see the byproduct is it's going to be lucrative in the future. But I think we have to be thinking of what we can give more than what we can get from these businesses at the beginning. And then you'll see amazing things happen where if your focus is in the right place. But if it's all inward centered and how can I get more from this, it's not going to be as successful. And it may take a little longer, but in the end, I think you'll be more successful.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Well, so when you're putting yourself out there, like what about the naysayers, right? The people who, internet's not a very nice place.
No, it's not. And we live in a world where people can say really mean things behind a computer screen. Like I don't think we would talk to people in real life the way that we leave comments online. I just think somehow it's made us mean. I don't know, but I feel fortunate. I should have way more haters than I do, and I don't. People are on the whole very nice, but every once in a while someone will take issue with something I've said, or they'll tell me I'm bad. And at the beginning, it was really, I'm like this tender little soul, like, okay, you're right. I shouldn't do this podcast. Who do I think I am? And I would get really sad, and I'd have 1,000 5-star ratings, and one person would say something crappy, and I'd be like, oh, I shouldn't do this anymore. They're right. And I would write back, I'm sorry. And I would, at the beginning, if you listen to the beginning first podcast, I would apologize always, like on the next one, like, I'm sorry I said, boys when I should have said girls. And, I took it way too seriously. But there's a Christian author that I really like. Her name's Jen Hatmaker. And she said something in one of her books that I just took to heart. And she said, don't try to win over the haters. You're not the Jack A whisperer, right? You're not the donkey whisperer. And to me, that helped me a lot, because I don't need to pander to the few people that are angry and worry all about making them happy when so many people are happy. And so I always want to be cognizant if I am saying something wrong. I take it all seriously. Like, did I say something wrong? Because if I did, then I want to admit it. And there's a podcast host, her name's Jody Moore, and she does like life coaching, and she has an episode on being wrong. Everybody should go listen to that, because she's like, so what if we're wrong? And so I've learned also to say, oh, you're right, I probably shouldn't have said that, I was wrong. And it isn't like the end of the world. I mean, go listen to that. If you get anything from this podcast, go listen to it, and then you can turn to your wife and go, oh yeah, sorry, I was wrong. And your wife's going to go, because we just don't say we're wrong, And so that's the other thing. I've just learned to like really look, did I offend them? Was what I said wrong? And if it seemed weird, I'll apologize. And if I wasn't wrong, I'll just say, thank you for your concern. I appreciate it. I will try to do better in the future. But I used to really take it hard. And now if you're going to be in any kind of public forum, you've just got to learn to get a little thick skin, because people are going to be mean. Why do we live in a culture where people want to be mean? I don't know, but we do.
It's how it is. It's the reality right now. And I think like starting out, most people who are kind-hearted and want to serve, right? They don't want to exclude anyone. So they're like trying to make their message. They're trying not to say things that offend people.
Right.
But like ultimately the same thing that like, kind of all the reasons we said, well, there's a tribe or a group of people that really want to hear from you. It's like, that also means there's a group of people that really you shouldn't be trying to serve, right?
Yeah.
Like, here's your group, and serve them well. And if people start being naysayers from the outside who don't belong in your group, then there's got to be a way to be like, I'm not trying to offend you, but I'm also not trying to cater to you. So.
Right.
Sorry.
Right. Well, and a good example is one time this Axe body spray, I was watching something with my kids on AMC, and it was like the raunchiest commercial I've ever seen. And I was like, what is this? So I wrote to Axe body spray, and I was like, what the heck was that? Like, my kids are watching. It was so gross. I can't believe it. And they wrote back and they said, we don't care. You're not our target audience. And although that was terrible, it was true. And so I guess maybe you're right. But I wrote back and said, really? Who do you think's buying Axe body spray for their husbands and their kids? I am your target audience, dummies. But then I wrote to AMC and they took it off. But they did say, like, you know what? Like, we don't really care. You're not the people that were whatever. And so sometimes maybe we have to take that route. Like, maybe not, we don't really care, but I'm sorry. And I have said that too. Like, there's other podcasts about Come Follow Me, and I've even written the names of them. Maybe you would like to go listen to one of these other ones, because I can't be offended when I can't please every single person, because you can't. And man, these days you have to walk on pins and needles no matter what you say. I said, oh, I got the vaccine. I got my shot. My arm hurts. Like I just mentioned it in the podcast. I'm like, oh, I'm grateful I was able to get it finally. And I had people, why vaccine? And I was like, dude, I didn't say go get a vaccine. I just said my arm hurts. And people like, why are you telling us we have to get a vaccine? And I'm like, so even when you aren't saying anything offensive, people will find some way to be offended. So that's probably a hard thing to navigate. And I'm not perfect at it. It still hurts me, but I have learned to just say, I'm sorry.
That's good. I mean, I think that is what so many listeners on this show need to hear. Because like the word extraordinary, right? The Extraordinary Business Life podcast, the word extraordinary by definition is extraordinary. It's not ordinary. And so the things that cater to everyone, those are ordinary things. Those are like these universal things that like everyone, that'll make everyone feel comfortable and whatnot. Those are ordinary.
Right.
But by definition, to do something extraordinary while not trying to offend and exclude, it's going to, because it's going to make the people who chase ordinary stuff uncomfortable.
Right. Right.
And
you have a lot of good points.
Yeah, thank you.
That's true. It is. And I think we're easily defeated. A couple people, my son is a great writer. And he's like, if I wrote this whole book and took it to a company, because we were talking about how J.K. Rowling's like, what, 7, 8 people said, no, we don't want this. And all the people who said we don't want it got fired later. Like, you could have, why don't we want this? But he's like, if I wrote this whole book and took it to someone and they said it was garbage, I'd say, yeah, it is garbage. You're right. And I'd throw it in the garbage, and we have to get like an inner drive to believe in ourselves. Like, this isn't garbage, because when people tell us that, I think it's real easy to go, okay, yeah, you're right. And maybe give up on dreams that we shouldn't give up on. But it's hard. It's hard to find that inner confidence to keep going, even when people say this isn't good.
Yeah.
That's hard.
That's true. I love that you shared that. That's fantastic. Because you're right. I think like you can point to like probably any great invention or great business or great life, and they had plenty of opportunities to give up, or people thought they were crazy or nuts. And it's like, if they had listened to the first 99 people, then we wouldn't have, like, I'm thinking of Thomas Edison, right? If he stopped after the first 999 failures and didn't go on to the 1,000th try, then we wouldn't have light bulbs, or at least
we'd be sitting in the dark, or somebody else would have done it.
Yeah.
And I was thinking so simplistically, we wouldn't have Harry Potter.
Right.
But like, for real, it got me back into reading. How many kids did it spark a love for reading? So maybe if we think we can't listen to the first, we just have to keep trying. And I think if we're passionate about it, we have to keep trying. If it's a dumb idea and everyone's saying like, this is the worst, and the crickets are chirping and you're not being authentic or whatever, then maybe you need to listen to close people around you. Like, I don't think we need to just say, la, 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 I'm perfect. My ideas are perfect. Like, I do think we need to take heart from the close people around us who love us and care about us. Their opinion needs to matter. Like, maybe this isn't working, but you have to differentiate between naysayers and people who have good common sense, because you don't want to follow a dumb idea for 1,000 years. That's tricky. Yeah. That's tricky. How do you know when to stop? Think about the people closest to you who love you. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's tricky. You figure that out.
Well, I'll share this insight that I gained from being a dad. My wife had 4 kids, and I realized, so for the parents out there, you probably can sympathize with this feeling. It's like when they're newborn, they just sit there, right? It's kind of easy. And then they learn to roll over. And so you're like, and the only way you know that, if you're a dad, is you put them on the bed like you always do, and you go brush your teeth, and then you hear a thud and crying, and you're like, oh, and you're like, okay, I can't do that anymore
Right.
because they roll off the bed.
Uh-huh.
And then they learn to like stand up and walk, and now you've got to like take all the fragile things from the low shelves and move them up. And so you have these competing interests as a dad. One is I want my kids to be like high functioning, active human beings. So it's like
Right.
my long-term desire is that they learn to walk and run and develop physically. Now, that represents a short-term inconvenience for me. Now I have to like protect all my fragile things and put one of those protectors on my stairs. And it's like, so my short-term desire is I'm like, please don't, you know,
Right. Right.
stay there.
Yes.
Or like when your kids want to learn how to cook and you're like, oh, you're gonna ruin it. But like,
Right.
you know, the only way they can learn is by ruining it. And so you're like,
Right.
you've got these competing interests. And so it represents their progress, their growth. It represents an inconvenience for
Mm-hmm.
me, my wife, and everyone around us.
Mm-hmm.
And and so sometimes the people that love us the most, and this translates to like that same thing, by the way, exists like forever. So like every
Mm-hmm.
time we want to grow, every like you starting a podcast and it's new and it's like helping you grow, and like there might be people close to you that are like, you know, they're speaking out of love and of concern, and maybe it makes them uncomfortable a little bit, but
Right.
they're trying to advise you to do something else, you know. But
Right.
like if you, by following some of that counsel, sometimes you sacrifice what their actual long-term desire is for
Right.
you, which is to
Right.
become the most influential person you can be.
Right. Well, and that's where we're at this paradox, because your mom may tell you not to do it because she doesn't want to see you get hurt. You know, like, I don't want you to put yourself out there and make this podcast because what if people don't like you?
Yeah,
So maybe that advice I gave of having the closest people, that's not good either, you know? So maybe you just have to go with your heart
tricky.
and see. It is tricky. It is tricky because people who love you also don't want to see you fail, and they may not have the vision you do. So there's no way to know.
Yeah.
Naysayers, people who love you, who knows? Just go for your heart. And if you've been doing it for 15 years and it hasn't taken off, maybe try something else.
Yeah, yeah, I like that.
Maybe that's the what we've come down to. I don't even know.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's I love your insight on that, because that's like exactly this
That was
message.
your insight. I love your insight. That was good.
Well, thank you. But you live it out really well, because you're like you're showing up. You're in the arena. You're doing the you know, hard work and consistent work, and so you're reaching a lot of people. And so I think that like those are some of the reasons why I really was so stoked to have you on the show, because I just that exact message is what some of the listeners really need to hear, is like they're going to start out, and they are starting out. Some of them are like in the middle of this, and they're like, they woke up this morning frustrated that, you know, their bank account hasn't changed,
Right.
or that they don't have 10,000 people on Instagram following them, or,
Right.
you know, like they're like, man, I've been trying for weeks and weeks and I just haven't seen anything. You know, and then they get to hear you and your experience, and it just helps give them the encouragement that they need to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we have a responsibility as people on the earth to reach out to people who are doing a good job at something and tell them. Because a lot of times what helps me move forward is someone who wrote and said, you know, like the other day, I was feeling down about something and someone wrote and said, I really appreciate that you're doing this. It helps me every week. And I was like, I don't want to do the podcast this week. And when I read it, I went, oh, okay, I'll do it. And so I try in real life to, like, if somebody's nice at a restaurant, I'll try to like sometimes call the manager and just say, hey, this person was a really good waitress. Or if I have a product that I like, I'll try to reach out and say, hey, I really like this. And I think even down to, there's a woman in our church, it was Hinckley. I think it was one of the prophets, Gordon B. Hinckley's wife, said once, never suppress a generous thought. And I've kind of done that I've tried in my life. If I see someone at the airport and their hair's cute, I'll be like, hey, your hair's really cute. Your pants are nice. But I think as humans, like if we could do a little bit more of that and encourage people instead of just getting on when we're angry, it would help all of us move along. Cause I know I'm motivated by people just saying that they appreciate it. So, maybe what you get out of today is maybe not so much, how is this going to bless me, but how can I go bless somebody else? How can I help somebody else's small, thriving business? Maybe I can tell them I like it. Maybe I can share it on my Instagram page. Maybe I can do something like that to let somebody else know when they're doing a good job, because I totally appreciate that.
Fantastic. I love that thought. Just go lift someone else up. And it always lifts you up to do that. That's so awesome.
Especially a little guy, like
yeah.
I made my bracket for the, March Madness, and I voted for Ohio State. And when that Oral Roberts won, I wasn't even sad that it like busted my bracket. I was like, look at these little guys. Yay. And so I think we just have to root for the little guys. And when you see somebody doing something that's good, tell them, especially in this small business. If you're starting a small business and you see somebody else who's starting a small business, even if they're in your niche, like I was afraid to say these guys that are doing this great podcast, I was afraid to say anything about it because I didn't want everyone to leave me and go to them. But my sister, when I put something on, I'm like, they said the greatest thing today. My sister was like, that is so cool that you're confident enough in your thing that you can talk about their thing and not have to dog on them or anything like that. So I think even that, lift each other up, help each other. Why not try to just lift everybody up? I don't know. Absolutely. Unless it makes you broke, but I'm not trying to make money. So whatever. I guess I would be broker. I don't know.
Oh man. Well, so I love that you've been able to make the time and be on the show. How can people find you, Melanie? If people want to reach out to you, or
if they want to murder me?
No, that's it.
How can they literally find me? I'm not going to give my address. I am not going to get murdered. No, it's if they Google "come follow me for us" or Melanie Stroud. My name is Melanie Wellman for a long time, so I think in a lot of places it still says Melanie Wellman. So I did put the last 2 podcasts on YouTube. We'll see how that goes. I don't know. I'm a little nervous about that, but the podcast, anywhere you listen to a podcast, you can find it.
Fantastic. Well, for the listeners and watchers, this has been Melanie Stroud. It's been fantastic to have you on the show. Thank you so much for your insight. Can't wait to hear more about your book coming out. I guess it's still months away, but I can't wait to see more. And
thank you.
Keep up the awesome work.
Thank you. You're awesome. Thanks for having me on.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Okay. Thanks.